Okay, so it looks like you're thinking about a career shift, right? A big one into the world of leather goods. Becoming a leather goods manual operator, huh?
Yeah, it sounds like more than just a passing thought from the sources you shared with us.
For sure. And that's why we're here to really dive deep into this, right? Like, what does this role actually involve on a day-to-day basis? What skills are we talking about needing to succeed here?
And of course, how do you stand out in what can be, frankly, a pretty competitive job market? We don't want to sugarcoat that.
No sugarcoating here.
Ah.
But what I find fascinating is this deep dive, it's kind of a cool mix. We're talking about old school craftsmanship, traditional skills.
But then we're layering on these modern career strategies using today's tech to help you navigate that whole job search process.
Exactly. It's like using a high-tech GPS to follow a really well-worn path, that path of a skilled craftsperson. And speaking of those skills, let's get down to brass tacks here. What does a leather goods manual operator actually do? I mean, what does a typical day look like?
Okay, picture this. You're in a workshop.
I'm picturing it.
The air's filled with that, amazing aroma of leather.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this rhythmic tapping of tools all around you. That's your soundtrack.
Yeah.
And you've got raw leather in your hands. You're taking that and using, honestly, your own two hands, your skill, your eye,
Your artistry.
to transform it into something beautiful. We're talking handcrafted goods here.
I'm seeing some amazing bags, wallets, belts. And you've flagged some sources talking about the actual tools of the trade. I mean, this isn't some factory job pushing buttons. We're talking about real, knives, scissors, all
Right, tools with a history.
tools with a history. So there's that artistry, the precision involved, but then there's also a physicality to it. Does that resonate with what's drawing you to this kind of work?
For sure. Especially because you mentioned feeling a bit burnt out, right?
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Stuck at that desk job. This definitely speaks to a different pace, wouldn't you say? You're connecting with the materials, with the process.
Using your hands.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, you have something tangible to show for it.
Speaking of tangible, let's talk about the actual work environment. Because the sources mention a few possibilities, right? You've got your factories, workshops, but then there's also the dream, maybe, working from home,
Oh, yeah, the dream.
setting your own hours, being your own boss. That's tempting, isn't it?
It does sound pretty tempting. But the sources also bring up the practical side of things. Because leatherworking, you need some specialized stuff. Tools, equipment.
Right, the nitty-gritty.
And honestly, that might mean you'll need a dedicated workspace, at least when you're getting started.
So the home-based workshop fantasy might need to wait a bit.
Yeah, might need to wait a bit. But it's not off the table completely.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Definitely something to keep in mind for the future.
Yeah.
But for now, let's stay grounded, right? We need to look at the here and now. Before you dive headfirst into anything, it's really important to weigh those pros and cons just to be sure.
Okay, fair enough. You're good at keeping us grounded. But let's talk about what makes this career path so appealing in the first place.
Well, you mentioned loving to work with your hands.
Absolutely.
And you have this desire to create.
Right.
That's huge in this field. You're not just slapping parts together. You're part of a process that results in something unique, handcrafted.
Special.
Exactly.
And let's not forget the whole job stability thing. Because the sources show this growing market for handcrafted goods, right? Like custom-made, one-of-the-kind items. People love that stuff.
They do.
And in today's job market, that kind of stability is huge, especially if you're looking for a career that you can really grow with long term.
But let's be real, it's not all sunshine and roses. The sources are very upfront about that.
Oh.
Some tasks are repetitive. There's potential for physical strain. And yeah, you might be exposed to chemicals. We got to be honest about that part.
So it's not all those glamorous Instagram-worthy finished products.
Not always.
Yeah.
There's a reality check here. You need to be honest with yourself, like really honest about whether you're comfortable with those aspects of the job.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some past concerns about repetitive stress injuries. Oh, yeah.
That's definitely something to keep in mind here, right? It's not about being put off. It's about going in with your eyes wide open.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
And speaking of knowledge, I'm curious about career progression. Let's say you've got the basics down, you're a total whiz with those tools. What's next? Where do you go from there? So you've climbed that first ladder rung, right? You're creating some amazing stuff. Where can you go from there? What's next?
Well, the sources we found paint a few different paths you could take.
Yeah.
Like one option is you could climb that management ladder,
Okay.
become a supervisor, maybe even manage a whole workshop someday.
Oh, wow. Overseeing the whole operation?
Yeah. But then there's the path that really speaks to a lot of folks, the entrepreneurial route,
Oh.
starting your own business,
Yeah.
building your own brand from the ground up.
And that brings us right back to that home-based workshop. Designing your own space, choosing your projects, calling the shots.
It's a real possibility.
Yeah.
And think about it, the skills you learn as a leather goods manual operator,
Yeah.
that craftsmanship, that attention to detail.
You can't learn that overnight.
Exactly. And even the business sense you pick up along the way, those are all transferable skills. They set you up perfectly to run your own show.
Okay, I have to admit, you've got me feeling inspired. But before we go designing our dream workshops, let's talk about landing that first job, right?
Right. Got to start somewhere.
Because you highlighted RoleCatcher in the sources. What is that all about?
So RoleCatcher, it's really interesting. It's not just a job board, where you're scrolling through endless listings. It's more about giving you a competitive edge.
Which is key these days.
Absolutely. Especially for someone like you who's making a career switch.
Yeah, I need every advantage I can get.
Exactly. And that's where they come in. They've got all these features, and they're designed to, well, help you actually land that dream job. Like one thing they do is CV and resume optimization.
What does that even mean?
So basically, they help you tailor your resume and experience to really highlight the skills that matter most for this specific type of work.
So it's like having a professional resume writer in my corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But way less expensive, thankfully.
Okay, that's good to know.
And they don't stop there. They also offer interview practice.
Oh, wow, so you can do mock interviews.
Yes. And get this, they even have AI-powered feedback on your performance.
Wait, hold on. AI feedback. You mean like a robot analyzes every word I say?
Pretty much.
That sounds kind of terrifying and amazing at the same time.
It's the future. But really, think of it like having a personal interview coach available 24/7. That could be so valuable, especially for someone switching careers. It helps you refine your approach, identify any blind spots.
Polish those rough edges.
Yes. And walk into that interview with confidence, knowing you're putting your best foot forward.
It's like having a secret weapon to fight off those interview jitters. Speaking of which, let's talk about the interview itself. What kind of questions should I be ready for?
Oh, the dreaded interview. Even just thinking about them can make my palms sweat a little. But the source material actually had some really solid advice on acing those conversations. Like, first and foremost, be ready to talk about your passion for leatherwork. They'll want to know what draws you to this craft, what excites you about working with your hands and creating something tangible.
So more than just rattling off a list of skills for my resume.
Totally. It's about telling your story, showing them the why behind the what.
Bye. Got it.
They might also ask about your experience working with leather specifically. Now, I know this is a career change, but think broadly. Maybe you've done some DIY projects, even just as a hobby.
DIY project.
Anything that shows them you've got an existing interest, some aptitude.
You reminded me about that leather journal cover I made. Yeah, I should brush up on that project, refresh my memory on the techniques and stuff.
Exactly. And come ready to talk about the qualities of a successful leather goods manual operator. We're not just talking about steady hands here, okay?
Yeah.
It's about work ethic, that attention to detail, problem solving on the fly.
It's about being a perfectionist.
Right. I wouldn't say perfectionist exactly, but it's about striving for perfection with every stitch. That dedication to quality, that meticulous attention to detail. Those are the things that really set someone apart.
Noted. Anything else?
Let's see. Oh, be prepared to talk about how you stay current with industry trends, because this field, it's always evolving. New techniques, new materials, new design aesthetics, it's constantly changing. Employers want to see that you're committed to that lifelong learning, to always improving your craft.
That makes a lot of sense. I've actually already bookmarked a few online letterworking forums and some blogs too. I love that there's always something new to learn.
That's the spirit. And, it ties directly into those advancement opportunities we were talking about. Because you did mention some concerns about automation, right?
Yeah, it's definitely on my mind. Like, are robots going to take over those workshops anytime soon?
It's a valid concern. But here's the interesting thing. The more specialized your skill set, the harder you are to replace. Think about it. Handcrafted, bespoke goods, those pieces that require a human touch, a discerning eye, that's where automation falls short.
So it's not just about learning a trade, it's about becoming an artisan.
Becoming irreplaceable, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
It's about being that craftsperson whose work is sought after because it's handmade, one of a kind. That's something special.
Talk about job security. It's like this act of creative rebellion in a world that's becoming more and more automated. You're not just making a living, you're preserving a tradition, making your mark on the world one stitch at a time.
And that brings us right back to the interview, because that passion, that drive you're talking about, those are the things that'll help you stand out.
Okay, but what about those pre-interview jitters?
Yeah.
Because even with all the prep in the world, I know I'm going to have them.
Oh, for sure. But remember, you got the interview right. That means they see something in you already. Your resume, your skills, you passed the first test. Now it's about connecting, being yourself, letting your personality shine.
It's easy to get so caught up in, saying the right things that you forget to just be yourself.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. The person behind the resume, the passion behind the skills.
Okay, that's good advice. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, those nerves get the best of me. What's your, number one in-the-moment tip for calming down?
Breathe. I know it sounds so simple, but seriously, just taking a few deep breaths can work wonders. It centers you, quiets that inner critic,
Yeah, get out of your head.
and helps you show up as your most confident self.
So simple, but so effective. I'm a big believer in the power of a good deep breath.
Right. And hey, remember, you got this. You're passionate, you're prepared, and you're ready to start this new journey.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be back here and we'll be doing a deep dive on your successful leather goods business.
Now, that's a deep dive I wouldn't want to miss.
Me neither. But until then, best of luck with the job search. You've got the skills, the drive, and hey, you've got the support of this podcast to help guide you along the way. And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to chase your own passions, whether they lie in the world of leather or beyond.